The MSAHA playoffs are set to begin this weekend in the Jackson area for the 16U tournament. We will bring that live to you right here on the TSJW Network YouTube channel. We will also bring on Matthew Veverka here tonight to talk about that 16U tournament. Also, an interesting development going on in Laurel. Are they surging after a 70-32 win over Meridian? We'll talk about that a little bit as well, as we'll bring on Charlie Cotton. Also talk about some conclusions from the Gulf Coast District Tournament that happened this past weekend. You do not want to miss it. This is another episode of the MSAHA Basketball Weekly Show. It begins right now. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Trellis Williams right here. This is the TSJW Network YouTube channel. Please be sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button to the TSJW Network YouTube channel. I mean, we got a lot of stuff going on, and we are knocking on the door of 1,000 subscribers, so please be sure to go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already, and help us get there sooner rather than later. Also, check out the website, tsjwnetwork.net. That is the website. That's where the scores, standings, and schedules reside, as well as articles. Charlie Cotton wrote a new column this week. We will talk to him about that a little later, but that is on the tsjwnetwork.net website. Also, give us a follow on Instagram at tsjwnetwork. We got some interesting stuff on there as well. So last week we had a few games. We also had the Gulf Coast District Tournament, which we will talk about a little bit in just a few moments, but we also had some matchups around the league. So Laurel and Jackson took each other on January 18th, the Thursday before the district tournament. Had a 16U and 18U boys slate there. Laurel winning them both, a 44-39 win in the 16U game, and that was very interesting because Jackson went up early, and Laurel was able to come back and hustle back and win that ball game 44-39 there towards the end. In the 18U matchup, a 55-40 win for Laurel. A game was Jackson. They didn't let up. They stayed in the game the whole time, but Laurel had good control over it, just being able to get it into the post with Brock Anderson. And also, I mean, Landon Hollingsworth, Ethan Beach played a good game, staying on the attack. They were able to win that ball game 55-40. We actually, that game is available if you want to go back and watch it. It is on the TSJW Network YouTube channel right now. It is Laurel Nighthawks at the Jackson Victors. We stream that one live right here, and it is still available for you. PCA and Hattiesburg took each other on. That actually happened on Monday night in Hattiesburg. The game got rescheduled from January 15th to January 22nd, and so there was a 16U boys, 18U girls, 18U boys slate. 16U boys, PCA winning 41-32. The first time those two teams played, Hattiesburg won by a score of 36-33 down in Macomb. A good hard-fought game. Another hard-fought game this time, but it went to PCA. So the road teams have won both those 16U matchups. So that's a very interesting thing because that was a big game in determining seeding. There is now PCA was able to hold down the number 2 seed in the 16U tournament this upcoming weekend. 18U girls, PCA able to keep that number 2 seed as well there with a 27-18 win over Hattiesburg. So a low-scoring affair there. Hattiesburg is able to hold PCA low, but PCA able to handle business and get the win there. 18U boys, a close one, a barn burner, 44-40, a win for PCA down in Hattiesburg. So, very interesting there. A close game score. The first game those two teams played, PCA won 45-25, a 20-point win in Lacombe. But in Hattiesburg, the Forerunners able to keep it close and drop that one 44-40 to the PCA Paladins. Meridian and Laurel, that was last night. 16U boys, Laurel winning 40-32. They won that game. And then 18U girls, of course, the Laurel Lady Hawks not lost a conference game. They're now 18-4 overall with a 55-27 win there. They were able to win that ball game. 18U boys, Laurel winning 70-32. And we're going to talk about that a little later. The first time those two teams played, Laurel won that game barely 60-55. But on senior night, they were able to really do it up. I mean, senior night in which they had no seniors, but senior night, nevertheless, they win 70-32 over Meridian. So that's a statement win for the Laurel Nighthawks. And they seem to be on a surge because, and as we mentioned that we would talk about in the district tournament, I mean, Laurel did pretty well, winning 2 out of the 4 games. So they went 2-2, able to beat the Mid-South Mustangs as well as the CHA Flame. So they were definitely coming off of that and then able to beat Meridian by nearly 40 points. So they're on a little run there. Also, the Muddy River Counselors finished with they started with the number 3 seed in the district tournament. They played against the Faulkner Falcons, a game in which they led the entire game until the very end. Faulkner able to knock them off, and that kind of derailed the tournament for them. They were able to win a game, but then played against PCA on the last day, a game in which PCA was able to pull out. And so that's the first time PCA has beaten the Muddy River Counselors this year, because the first time is a close game. The second time, the Counselors blew out the Paladins, leading by as much as 31 points in that game, but PCA able to win the game there in district. So that'll be interesting moving forward, as in 2 weeks we will be having the 18U MSAHA tournament. So that should be very interesting. Another team that was in it, the Meridian Flyers, they were not able to win a ball game there at the district tournament, but they definitely fought hard there in the tournament as well. The Jackson Victors in the 16U and the 14U. Laurel's girls team able to make it to the championship game, in which they lost to the Tyler Heat by 15 points, but they made a good run there in Monroe. So saw a lot of good things there from MSAHA teams in the district tournament, and we'll see how that goes moving forward, and what are those implications for the MSAHA tournament. But next week, we've got a couple of matchups. Of course, we will talk about the 16U tournament, which is the major thing that is happening this weekend. We'll talk about that in detail. But next week's games, you got Hattiesburg and Laurel. That will actually be tomorrow night. That will be down at Salem Heights Baptist Church in Laurel, Mississippi. The Laurel Nighthawks, we'll see how this surge really is going. They're playing against a team in the Hattiesburg Foreigners they lost to by 23 points the first time. We'll see if this surge is actually real, as they host the Hattiesburg Forerunners tomorrow night. That's 16U boys, 18U girls, and 18U boys. Also, when it comes to the girls, Hattiesburg's girls, they are on a little skid, so they really want to get back on the horse. It's going to be tough to get back on the horse against Laurel. Laurel's just hasn't lost a conference game this year, and none of them have been anywhere near close either. So that's going to be a tough matchup for Hattiesburg. Hattiesburg is at the 3 spot, and they're not going to fall from the 3 spot. They've already won more games than Meridian has, and Meridian doesn't have any more games either. So Hattiesburg is firmly in the 3 seed in the conference. But at this point in time, if we look at the go ahead and look at those 18U girls standings, I mean, Hattiesburg now looking at 4 conference losses, and they are looking at 4 conference losses with a 5-4 conference record, and they haven't even played Laurel this last time. They are much likely to finish with a 500 record in conference, with losses to Laurel, with 2 losses to PCA, and then a loss to the Muddy River Counselors. So should be interesting to see just kind of how all this goes forward here. But Hattiesburg and the Muddy River Counselors will be the first round matchup. They lost to them last time by a score of 33-25. So that'll be interesting. The 18U girls tournament should be very interesting. And me and Charlie will talk about that in a little bit. Another game that's happening on Monday, the Jackson Victors and the Meridian Flyers. So that is right now the bottom of the conference, the bottom 2 teams in the 18U boys field. Jackson has not been able to win a conference game yet. Meridian has won 1, and that was against Jackson by a score of 46-39. That game will be in Hickory, so that should be an interesting matchup there to see what happens. And that will be the last conference games of the season. And obviously the elephant in the room is that, there's 16U games going on, but these games won't count towards the 16U tournament or towards seeding, because the tournaments have already been made. Just the timing didn't work out for those. After last night's games, the 16U field was set, and we will talk about it a little bit later on. But first, I want to go ahead and just remind you once again to go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Hit the subscribe button to the TSJW Network YouTube channel. We will bring on Charlie Cotton, our TSJW Network contributor. Charlie Cotton, we are glad to have him with us. Charlie, we appreciate you being here for sure. You wrote a column this week saying that the top three seeds in the MSAHA conference and 18U boys are making it interesting. And you kind of talked about that district game with PCA and Muddy River, also PCA and Hattiesburg in a close game as well. And definitely we are in for some interesting action because it's basketball and things can swing in basketball, especially based on how you're shooting. And we've seen that in the past few games. How interesting do you think these playoffs will be in a couple weeks?
Well, it's going to be interesting because PCA, they beat the number 1 seed, and then we got close to beating the number 2 seed, and it looks tight. I think it's going to be very interesting. I think we're going to all go out there. Obviously, since it's tournament time, everybody's going to be peaking in their intensity and the energy that they bring, and hopefully peaking in their skill and different gyms and all that. We've kind of talked about all this before.
Yeah.
So many factors go into what wins a basketball game, and there's so many that you can use to your advantage, and there's so many that just kind of happen. You can't control that much. And it's tournament time, so people are going to go out there. They're going to be peaking, and I think it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And another team that I was talking about earlier, the Laurel Nighthawks, I mean, nearly beating Meridian by 40 points. I don't know all the details of that game, but I just know that a good, strong performance there from Laurel in that situation. I mean, you guys play Laurel tomorrow night, so we should see how that goes. But how real do you think this surge might be here for Laurel?
Who knows? I know seeing this, we're going to assume that they're on a surge, assuming that they're going to have momentum, assuming that they're going to come out with energy. And so we have to bring energy as well. And I kind of mentioned this in my article. I feel like we're finally finding that. We were looking for that, reaching for that all season. And we ended up playing LCS. And we really found that game. And we're starting to really implement that in conference. So I know we're going to be bringing our energy. And we're going to expect Laurel to bring their energy and use that as motivation for us. I think Laurel, they're definitely on momentum. They're playing Meridian and having a close game there, and then going and then beating them by 35. I mean, that's clearly a statement. That's clearly them progressing and really showing that they're not out of this conference and they're not out of this tournament by any means. And so we're going to go in there and expect that, and we're just going to have to see how it goes,
Yeah, and definitely their highest point total of the year. Definitely an interesting score to see there. Just kind of interested in seeing just kind of how that happened. So we got the 16U tournament coming up this weekend. You will be involved in it for the Hattiesburg Forerunners. The brackets have come out, and as we've seen, you guys are in that 3 spot in the league, and you play a first round matchup against the Jackson Victors. But what's very interesting is as we look at the 16U boys standings, I mean, you're talking about 3 teams with a 4-7 conference record, the same exact conference record. And then, I mean, you guys and PCA are a half game apart with a 7-3, 7-4 record. Of course, the Muddy River Counselors have won all the games, but what is just interesting to see is, I mean, just how is this going to go? I mean, what are you expecting to see in the 16 tournament? I'm just excited about seeing how wild it might be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm expecting it to be crazy. I mean, it's super tight. We were talking about, varsity looking tight, but this is actually tight. 3 teams with 4-7 records, and then us and PCA being so close in the games that we've played, and then obviously Muddy River, the clear favorites here. But everybody, it's tournament time. People are going to come out here giving it their all because this is their last chance this season. Like, you're never going to get this season back. If you're ever going to be motivated to play a basketball game, it's going to be here, And Jackson, they're a good team. We've seen them come out here and play really hard, and I think they've beat us one time too this season. And
In
Jackson's a
16U,
good,
yeah.
yeah. And then Laurel,
Yeah.
they're going to come out, all hands on deck. They normally save a couple players for varsity, which is smart, but this is going to be an all-day 16U tournament, and so everybody's going to be out there pretty much playing their hardest. So Laurel's going to be something that
Yeah,
you're
for
going to
sure.
have to look out for when you're playing this tournament. And then obviously there's us, and then there's PCA, who's PCA when they're locked in, they're locked in. And so you really have to, if you're on the opposite side, you have to lock in as well and bring your A game. And then Muddy River, they're always going to be tough, but anything can happen.
Yeah. And that's an really interesting point that you bring up, especially this year with the first year with the tournaments being separated, 18U and 16U. Now, usually 16U has a little bit of a damper on it just because
Yeah.
you got guys getting saves, and it always depends on what the organization is prioritizing in that particular year or how the 18U team's doing. But this one, that's all doesn't matter. It's all about 16U this weekend, so it should be very interesting to see. But Charlie, we appreciate you joining us.
Of course, bro. Of course.
We appreciate you joining us as always. Yes.
Yes, of course, bro.
Absolutely. Folks, want to remind you once again to please be sure to hit the subscribe button to the TSJW Network YouTube channel. We appreciate you joining us right here on the MSAHA Basketball Weekly Show. So now we want to bring on Matthew Veverka, who will be joining us this weekend, for Counselors TV coverage of the MSAHA 16U tournament right here, Counselors TV on the TSJW Network YouTube channel. Matthew, we appreciate you joining us.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, Trellis. I'm really honored to have this opportunity before me. Honestly, looking at this bracket, I'm just super pumped about this weekend. A lot of great matchups, a lot of great teams. It's going to be hard fought, and I can't wait. It's going to be awesome.
For sure. And so when you looked over these things, I was just talking to Charlie about it. You got 3 teams with the same conference records. You got the 2 and the 3 seed. And if you look at it right now, just looking through it, you talking about Jackson beat Hattiesburg one time. PCA has they've dropped 2 to Muddy River, lost 1 to Hattiesburg. But all these teams have played each other, they've beaten each other, and all these kind of things. What would be your expectation out of a tournament like this? You're going to have first day, you're going to have 2 courts going, and you're going to have games going on where you don't know what's going to happen in those games.
Right. That's just the beauty of tournaments. Coming into a tournament, not your record. Yes, it matters for your placement, obviously, but coming into this game, it's the hardest fought wins. Whether or not we're going to see upsets from these 4 and 7 teams, I can't really tell you that, but I can definitely agree with you and with Charlie Cotton that, especially like teams like Laurel, you got to watch out for them. Like a lot of what coach has told us in the lab is, just because you have all that talent, you got to go get it done. And so,
yeah,
those teams, you just got to watch out for them. And, you got to play your game, you got to play right, hit shots, play defense. And, evidently that's just what it's going to come down to, who can play the most hard fought games and come out on top.
Yeah. And that's kind of goes to where we're going to be talking, because we're going to be doing these games from the counselor's perspective, doing the counselor's games. The first counselor's game, of course, will be at 12:15 on Friday. We'll be bringing that to you right here on the TSJW Network YouTube channel on Counselors TV. That will be live. The Muddy River Counselors will be taking on the winner of the Laurel Nighthawks and the Meridian Flyers, and we'll be bringing that to you. I'll be play-by-play, of course, and Matthew right there as our color analyst. And Matthew, from the counselor's perspective, you're 12-0 in conference, and really all the games have been from at a pretty good margin as well. Just kind of talk about, from the counselor's perspective, what you're focused on in a field where you don't know who you're going to be playing against as in each round.
Right. Obviously the counselors having a 12-0 record is, definitely makes a statement there. You know, we have a lot of guys who just fight, you know, really hard to, you know, to help us get that record. And evidently, you know, all these wins. Coming into this game, kind of just the same thing, kind of the same mindset. You know, you have to get it done. You have to execute. Um, the mindset you have to kind of come into is that you have to expect it as if all these teams are 0-0, no wins, no losses. It's, you know, anything
Yeah.
goes. And so, you know, coming with a mindset like that and being able to execute well, I feel like is going to be the main focus for if as the counselors, you know, see this thing play out.
Yeah, and it looks like a very likely scenario. I mean, of course, Meridian's got a pretty good 16U squad as well, but a pretty likely scenario is that you're going to play Laurel in the first game from the Muddy River Counselors' perspective. And Laurel, you know, I mean, listen, they're 4-7 conference record. They're probably going to be able to stack the deck. I mean, all their players on their team are 16 eligible except for one player, and so
Right.
I mean, they could basically just bring their varsity squad to play the games. And you're talking about a team that's surging right now with a 40-point win the other day. I mean, just what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, pretty early on in the season, you could kind of feel Laurel's presence just kind of lurking. They haven't, you know, personally, in my personal perspective of things, it kind of just seems like they were trying to make things work and getting guys to
Yeah.
connect. I know that, you know, the team bonding is important, and so just kind of seeing them finally hit that surge. I mean, you got to watch out for them. They're coming for us, and I think that Meridian and Laurel is going to be a great matchup. I think that both teams are going to fight really hard. And honestly, if you ask me, I couldn't even tell you who's going to win that game. I mean, I'm really excited though. It's a great matchup.
Absolutely. And so you have differences in how the tournaments are set up. So the 18U tournaments, obviously, there's still double elimination. So if you have a team that's the best team, you got to beat them twice. You know, in this
Right.
16U tournament, however, you're talking about single elimination. So that means all you have to do is you just got to be on fire one game, and you can
Right.
knock off the top team and send them packing. How much does that affect? How nervous does that have you feeling? If you're the number one seed, the undefeated team, you'd probably prefer to have the double elimination.
Right. I mean, it's a scary thing. I mean, coming off of the tournament down in Monroe, I know a lot with the game versus PCA. You know that just the small details matter. I mean, the
Yeah.
fact we just couldn't hit shots that game, and so going into a tournament with only a single elimination. I mean, just going right back to the basics, basic execution. You got to hit your shots. You got to play defense. You can't underestimate anybody in tournament ball. And so, with that kind of mindset, I know Muddy River, we're aggressive, we're aggressive team. And so, if we can keep that intensity and execute well, I feel like that Muddy River will have a good place in this tournament.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the counselors have not lost a 16 games since February 5th, 2022. So as long as you can keep that going, a streak like that is how you're able to win tournaments. But we appreciate Matthew having you once on the show for the first time, and we'll be live right here on the TSW Network YouTube channel this weekend, starting on Friday at 12:15, as the Muddy River Counselors take on the winner of Laurel and Meridian. Matthew, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me again, Trellis. I can't wait to see y'all this weekend, and it's going to be great.
Absolutely. So, folks, we appreciate you joining us for the MSAHA Basketball Weekly Show, and we are coming up to the end of the season here. So next week, of course, our show next week we'll try to have a really good show for you guys next week, as we will be previewing the big time tournaments, the 18U and 14U tournaments. That will take place in Hattiesburg. We will be previewing that and also talking about what happens this weekend in the 16U tournament next week. So you don't want to miss that show next week. So we'll be live right here at 8 p.m. on the TSJW Network YouTube channel. Please be sure to go and hit the subscribe button right now if you haven't done so already. And then the following week will be the last show of the year to close it out following the final MSAHA playoffs. So, folks, thank you for joining us. We will be live on Friday starting at 12:15 for the Muddy River Counselors taking on the winner of Laurel and Meridian. It'll be live on Counselors TV right here on the TSJW Network YouTube channel. I'm Trellis Williams. Appreciate Michael Williams in the background running our graphics and all the like. Appreciate Charlie Cotton as our contributor and Matthew Veverka as well being our contributor today. And we look forward to joining him for our streams. I'm Trellis Williams. This is the MSAHA Basketball Weekly Show. We out.